Good morning and happy Easter. My name is Mwangi Maurice Mukami, Mwariri, Medina. I know those are many names, we'll unpack them together. The name given to me at birth was Mwangi. I'm from something we call Mbarea Kemodo, family of Kemodo, from Muhiriga wa Ashera, the clan of Ashera in the nation of Kikuyu and Mombi. When I was born, my mom had a complication. The umbilical cord refused to untie from my neck for hours. And that early morning, my mom decided to dedicate my life to God and called me Moses to signify my salvation from peril. I was raised Catholic and chose the name Maurice as my confirmation name. I am the last, technically the second last of 9 siblings. For my surname, I decided on my mom's name, Mukami, which I preferred over my father's name, Mwariri. We had a conversation with my father, and my father decided, and I accepted, he shouldn't continue being my dad. Since I was a little kid, I had always desired to be a priest, but couldn't fathom the idea of celibacy. I liked girls. For this reason, the priest and I reached an understanding that there were other ways to serve God. In the late 90s, I joined the Pentecostal movement in Kenya, founding Christ End Times Global Ministry. In the process, I met my first spiritual dad, Medina, and we became so close that I almost adopted his name legally, but that didn't materialize because we had unresolved issues. I hope you're beginning to see a pattern here. A decade and a year later, I was still in search of God at Atlanta Bible College doing my theology before I abruptly ended my studies and wrote my coming out letter. I was attracted to men. Since being a priest was no longer an option and being a pastor in a non-affirming Pentecostal church was impossible, community organizing and humanitarian work became my career path. Between these dramatic changes, I served as the CEO of the Martin Luther King Jr. Africa Foundation and also the youth president of the National Youth Parliament in Kenya. In 2007, I came here to the United States for the first time under the Fulbright International Visitor Leadership Program. It's a program administered by the US Department of State for young leaders showing potential to lead their countries. I was impressed and inspired by this country called America and hoped to return to my country to model it like the United States. 2 years later, I was here again, the second time as a young diplomat, to participate in the inauguration of Barack Obama as the 44th President of the United States. It was what Dr. King's called my mountaintop. The New York Times did a feature on me. It titled it Hope Crosses the Atlantic. I met with many high-ranking dignitaries and I enjoyed the red carpet reception. But less than a year later, I returned here to the United States for the third time. This time, there were no motorcades. There were no highly trained security guards to receive me because I was shaken, fearful, and fleeing when I arrived in San Francisco under the threats of my life and persecution for my sexuality. As I filled out the paperwork, I was forced to answer a question that I had never answered in my life. The question asked my race. And so I telephoned my mom back to Nairobi and asked her whether my light-skinned complexion made me white. My mom clarified it did not, and I realized then that I was black. In 2011, while I was waiting for the immigration department to determine whether I'll stay in the United States, I reached my absolute rock bottom. I was on the precipice of homelessness. I struggled with my faith. I struggled with my sexuality. I decided that there has to be a way in which these two parts of myself, my faith and my sexuality, coexisted. And so I found myself here at City Church. And I remember sitting and asking God, making a promise that, God, if I made through this moment, I'll give 10% of my income for people like me. A job came through. I was hired as a supervisor for 2 of San Francisco's largest homeless shelters, where I served for 5 years. Everybody used to call me the mayor because of some things that we did to dignify those people who were unhoused. Eventually, I became the chairman of the Shelter Monitoring Committee here in San Francisco, overseeing more than 23 homeless shelters. Indeed, I had become the mayor after all. In 2015, I founded MLife Foundation to support children, mentor youth, and amplify the voices of underserved groups here in San Francisco and in Nairobi, Kenya. We celebrated 5 years last year. I was raised spiritually in a prophetic Pentecostal ministry. I was taught that we hear God's voices through prophets, something I still believe to be true. However, this made me insensitive to seeing God elsewhere. God was calling me to expand my understanding. God was asking me to see him and find him in new ways and in new places. And so I began to find God in the bedbugs of the homeless shelters where I was a supervisor, instead of the 5-star hotels that I used to sleep in. I began to find God in the encouragement of friends who never gave up on me, even when I had given up on myself. I began to see God in this community of City Church, even though it is different from the Pentecostal church that I grew up. Over the past decade, I've received the gift of finding God in numerous situations and places. I found God in places that I didn't believe he could be present. In the under-resourced children we serve, among young leaders who want to change the world, and families with so little but give their all. I even find God in this place where I was invited to share my testimony, but never really felt like home until recently. Many years ago, I prayed Mother Teresa's prayer. I said, God, break my heart so completely that the whole world falls in. I see these answered prayers in spaces I'm blessed to co-create with God, where people find dignity, love, and acceptance. In spaces where I can grow, not just spiritually, but emotionally and intellectually. And in the love and friendship that blossom from these places, including here at City Church, a place where we're invited to be whole, a place you can be whole too. God bless you this Easter.